My dad went from steel engineers to Nevada rebar. There was about 3 other steel companies he worked for. Mid to late 70s, my dad started his own steel business.
They took junkyard scraps and turned them into rolling masterpieces. And then, just like that, the cameras stopped rolling. Vegas rat rods exploded onto Discovery Channel in 2014 and became one of the wildest, most unapologetically raw car shows on television. A ragtag crew of welders, misfits, and metal artists, slinging sparks in the Nevada desert. But behind every sick build and every dramatic close-up, there were secrets, feuds, shocking exits, and at least one cast member whose story is still completely unresolved. So what really happened to the cast? We've got the tea, honey. Let's go. Sin City, the show that set Vegas on fire. Okay, for anyone who somehow missed this show, let me paint you a picture. It's 2014. Discovery Channel is on a hot streak with car shows. Fast and Loud is already tearing up the ratings, and the network is hungry for more. Then along comes Steve Darnell, this scruffy, visionary force of nature out of Las Vegas, with a shop full of controlled chaos and a philosophy that could not be more different from anything else on TV at the time. No candy apple paint jobs, no trailered show queens, no fluff. Vegas rat rods, also known as Sin City Motors in parts of the world, was built on one savage idea: take rusted, forgotten, beat-up junkyard relics and resurrect them as fire-breathing, jaw-dropping, apocalyptic works of art. We're talking Mad Max if he had a network budget and a welding certificate. The builds weren't just cars, they were stories. A locomotive-themed rat rod for a Colorado client. A World War II tribute machine built as a charitable gift for veterans. Each one of a kind, each one reportedly costing somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 from concept to completion. The shop at the center of it all was WelderUp, Steve's Las Vegas fabrication playground, and the crew that filled it was, and we say this with absolute love, a beautiful collection of characters. You had seasoned welders, a diesel engine veteran with over 40 years under his belt, a third-generation fabricator who started swinging metal at the age of 13, and, oh yes, a tattooed Canadian welder who became arguably the show's biggest fan magnet. 4 seasons, spin-offs like Vegas Rat Rods Resurrected and Vegas Rat Rods Supercharged. And then, silence. The kind of silence that has fans spiraling in comment sections years later, asking what on earth happened. Well, that's exactly what we're here to answer. But before we get into the exits, the fallouts, and the unresolved mysteries, we need to talk about the people who stayed. Because not everyone left that garage, and those loyalty stories are just as interesting as the dramatic walkouts. So which cast members never clocked out of WelderUp, and what are they actually doing right now? Stay with us. The Loyalists, the crew that never left. Here's something the drama tends to overshadow. WelderUp is still very much alive and kicking, and a handful of the original cast never went anywhere. Let's give credit where it's absolutely due. Travis Dieter, the welder, fabricator, and artist, who was always doing something impressive in the background while the rest of the show generated its heat, never left the WelderUp family. Travis didn't chase fame the way some of the others did. He just kept building. He's been posting project updates on YouTube, sharing his craft with an audience that genuinely appreciates skilled work over spectacle. Understated? Definitely. Still doing remarkable things? Without question. Then there's Justin Kramer, who has one of the most impressive origin stories in the entire cast. Third-generation welder. third generation. His grandfather welded, his father welded, and Justin started picking up the trade at 13 years old. 13! By the time Vegas Rat Rod's cameras ever pointed at him, he already had years of real fabrication experience behind him. Justin stayed loyal to WelderUp through the show's full run and remains part of the operation today. Some people are just built for one shop, and Justin is absolutely that person. There's also Merlin Johnson. You'll sometimes see the name spelled Merlon, depending on where you're reading, the diesel engine specialist who walked into the WelderUp garage with over 40 years of mechanical experience already banked. 40 years. The man has been elbow-deep in engines since most of the current cast was learning to ride bikes. He's still listed as part of the WelderUp crew, and frankly, you don't replace 40 years of diesel expertise. You simply don't. And then there's Barber Dave Breen, one of the more colorful personalities in the garage. Dave handled the upholstery work on the builds, the interiors, the seat work, all that finishing touches wizardry that tied everything together. But his nickname, Barber Dave, was earned for a reason. Post-show, Dave took the barbering side of his life seriously and set up his own shop in Utah, running it with a full punk hot rod aesthetic. Think less chain salon, more if a rat rod were a barber shop. Exactly as wild as you'd expect from a WelderUp alum. These are the guys who kept the lights on and the sparks flying long after the TV deal wound down. No dramatic exits, no tearful Instagram confessions. They just showed up and kept building. And honestly, there is something deeply cool about that. But not everyone felt the same way about life inside those garage walls. Some people had very different experiences, and a few of them were not quiet about it. Before we get to the walkouts, though, we need to go all the way back to where this whole thing started, because the origin story of the man behind WelderUp is more fascinating than the show ever had time to tell. Steve Darnell, from Montana, kid to Vegas legend. Let's talk about the man himself, because Steve Darnell is genuinely one of those people who built something out of nothing, and his backstory is the kind of thing that makes TV producers sit up straight. Steve did not grow up in Las Vegas. Surprising, right? The guy who became synonymous with this gritty, turbocharged desert city actually grew up in Billings, Montana. And that matters because it explains a lot about who he is. Montana shapes a certain kind of person. Self-reliant, stubborn in the best possible way. Someone who figures out how to fix things because there often isn't anyone else around to do it for you. It was in Montana that Steve first got his hands dirty with steel. His family was in the steel business, and young Steve was right there alongside them, learning to weld and fabricate before most kids his age knew what an arc welder even was. That early exposure didn't just give him a skill, it gave him a language. Metal, to Steve Darnell, was always a way of expressing something that words couldn't quite capture. After high school, Steve made the move that changed everything. He headed to Las Vegas, where he spent roughly 15 years slowly building his craft, his reputation, and eventually the shop that would make him famous, WelderUp. What started as a modest dream grew into something extraordinary. The build that first put Steve on the map? Not a rat rod. It was something called the D-Rod, a twin-turbo, 12-valve diesel engine monster that produced 1,000 horsepower. That build made the broader car world stop and pay attention overnight. Hot Rod magazine covered it. Diesel World ran it. The word spread fast. There's a guy in Vegas doing something completely different. Discovery Channel came calling in 2013. By April 2014, Vegas Rat Rods was on air, and Steve Darnell was a television star. Since the show wound down, Steve has refused to sit still. He designed the post-apocalyptic vehicles, props, and set pieces for Five Finger Death Punch's music video for House of the Rising Sun. And if you've seen that video, you know those machines are genuinely something else. He launched an online welding course at www.welder101.com in 2020, bringing hard-won expertise to aspiring fabricators everywhere. He's been a regular at SEMA. He collaborated with Pro Charger on a build centered on a 1957 Chevy that he tracked down specifically because it used to drive around his hometown of Billings when he was in high school. The Montana Kid, building his childhood memory car. You honestly can't write that. WelderUp itself continues to operate out of Las Vegas, 6 days a week with tours, welding classes, and a showroom full of builds that made the show what it was. Steve is the same person he always was, stubborn, creative, and completely allergic to good enough. Steve's story is one of building and thriving, but not everyone who came through that garage walked away smiling, and some of those exits left some seriously unresolved questions. The Great Departures. Twiggy, Grant, and Cheyenne. Okay, here we go. This is the section everyone has been posting about in Reddit threads and Facebook comment sections for years, so let's get into it properly. Twiggy Talent. The fan favorite. The woman who was arguably the single biggest reason a huge chunk of the audience tuned in week after week. Born in Ontario, Canada, Twiggy had an unconventional path to becoming a welder on a Discovery Channel show. She had modeled before, had experience outside the automotive world, and then fell completely, irreversibly in love with fabrication and never looked back. On Vegas Rat Rods, Twiggy was electric. Fans adored her. The comments sections flooded with questions the second she disappeared from screens. And disappear she did. In late 2017, she posted on Instagram and finally cleared the air. She'd left WelderUp to go back to school and earn her official welding certification at George Brown College in Toronto. People were genuinely stunned. She voluntarily walked away from a hit TV show to sit in a welding classroom? Yes, she did. Because she wasn't there for the fame, she was there for the craft. She completed the program. She returned to the trades. And she's still active on Instagram with a loyal following, championing women in the automotive and fabrication industries through her Hair Up and Hustle initiative, hosting Women in Trades events, and remaining one of the most genuinely admired figures to ever come out of that garage. Twiggy Talent didn't need Vegas Rat Rods as much as Vegas Rat Rods needed her. Then there's Grant Schwartz, a man who came to WelderUp from the opposite end of the country. Grant is from the small town of Bloomingdale, Ontario, and by his own account, landing on the show was a dream he had to work hard to make happen. He arrived for seasons 2 and 3 and immediately found himself in unfamiliar territory. He openly described WelderUp as unlike any shop he'd ever worked in. Cluttered, chaotic, and run in a way that was completely at odds with how he operated back home. By his own admission, on day 1, if it had been any other job offer, he might have turned around and left. He and Steve Darnell are both strong-willed, opinionated craftsmen, and yes, those personalities collided, regularly. Grant was also spending months away from his kids back in Ontario, which was genuinely wearing on him. After 2 seasons, he made the call. He went home. But here's what matters. Grant Schwartz went home and built. Schwartz Welding and Fabrication is his own operation in Ontario, and it's very much active. He came back to the Motorama Custom Car and Motorsports Expo in Toronto as both a celebrity and an exhibitor, showing off custom builds and speaking about his Vegas experience with no bitterness at all. He took everything he learned, the good, the frustrating, all of it, and turned it into fuel. That's not a sad story. That's a very satisfying one. And then there's Cheyenne Ruther, and this is where things genuinely get unresolved. Cheyenne had a brief run in the garage and was one of the very few women to appear on the show. She had real skills, but the screen time never really reflected that. And she was open about her frustration that the show wasn't giving her the opportunity to demonstrate what she could actually do. She also talked about wanting to be more present for her daughter. She left, and after that, the trail simply goes quiet. Fans have speculated about everything from acting and modeling to potentially relocating abroad entirely, but none of it is confirmed. As of today, Cheyenne Ruther's current situation is genuinely unclear, and based on everything we know, that might be precisely how she'd want it. One thing that fans have noted over the years is that several of the show's Canadian cast members, Twiggy, Grant, and Cheyenne, are all from Ontario. Some fans and observers have loosely speculated this was tied to the show's Canadian production involvement, though it's worth being clear, that's fan-level speculation, not confirmed network policy. What we do know is that all three brought something real and memorable to the show, regardless of how they got there. So the cast shifted, some people moved on, and life continued. But what does WelderUp actually look like today, years after the finale? WelderUp today, the shop that refuses to quit. Let's be very clear about something. WelderUp is not a relic. It is not a closed chapter. It is not a sad footnote to a canceled television show. WelderUp, right now, is open 6 days a week, and by every available account, it is thriving. The shop has evolved in ways the TV version could never fully capture. Yes, they still build. That never stopped. Custom rat rods, bespoke commissions, the kind of builds that make your jaw fall open and your credit score cry. Steve Darnell's creative vision has only sharpened with time. Without cameras dictating timelines and storylines, he has the freedom to take on projects that simply matter, not just ones that make good television. But WelderUp has also genuinely become a destination. For $5, you can walk in off the street and take a tour of the shop, see the iconic builds up close, walk the same floors where all of those sparks flew during the show's run, and get a behind-the-scenes look at a fabrication culture that is completely unique. Reviews from visitors have been consistently enthusiastic, with fans describing it as a genuinely memorable Las Vegas experience. There are welding classes available too. If you've ever wanted to learn the trade from the people who made it look extraordinary on national television, you can sign up and do exactly that. Steve also launched www.welder101.com in 2020 as an online extension, making that education accessible to people who can't make it to Las Vegas in person. WelderUp also hosts weddings. If you're the kind of person whose perfect ceremony involves being surrounded by hand-built mechanical sculptures in a Las Vegas fabrication shop, WelderUp is your venue. Honestly, it sounds incredible. The charity work continues as well. Steve has been building tribute vehicles for World War II veterans, passion projects that have nothing to do with ratings or brand partnerships and everything to do with legacy and respect. That has always been the heart of what he does. Steve's digital footprint is significant too. Over 400,000 Instagram followers, an active YouTube channel, SEMA appearances, and high-profile collaborations like the Pro Charger 57 Chevy build and the Five-Finger Death Punch music video work. WelderUp isn't limping along post-Vegas rat rods, it's running at full speed, which makes the next question that much harder to sit with. Because if the shop is alive, the crew is building, And Steve is as creative as ever. Why has there been no Season 5? And what actually happened to it? Season 5, the season that simply vanished. Oh, Season 5, you absolute mystery. Here's where it gets genuinely frustrating, because Season 5 of Vegas Rat Rods was not just wished for by fans in comment sections. It was listed as a real upcoming release. The show's Wikipedia page, maintained through consistent fan edits and source references, had Season 5 noted as due for release in the summer of 2020. The expectation was real. And then, summer 2020 arrived. And nothing happened. To be fair, 2020 happened to everyone. The entire world essentially shut down, television production schedules were obliterated, and shows were delayed, quietly shelved, or simply never reassembled. Vegas Rat Rods almost certainly got caught somewhere in that chaos. A production requiring a physical working garage, a hands-on crew, and close filming conditions was exactly the kind of show that a global shutdown would derail. But the silence stretched beyond 2020, into 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. And as of April 2026, there has been no official word, no confirmed cancellation from Discovery or Motor Trend TV, but no green light either. The show exists in an awkward space, not officially dead, but not coming back in any visible way. Motor Trend streams older episodes for fans who want to revisit the builds, but no new content has surfaced. The show ran 4 genuinely compelling seasons, spawned multiple spin-offs, launched several careers, and turned a Las Vegas fabrication shop into a cultural touchstone for an entire generation of car enthusiasts. Whether it ever returns is a question nobody has definitively answered. WelderUp doesn't need the cameras to keep building, but the fans, the people who fell in love with this weird, loud, spark-filled world between 2014 and 2018, are still out there, still watching old episodes, still asking the same question in every comment section. Maybe one day they'll get an answer. And there you have it, the full, real story of what happened to the cast of Vegas Rat Rods. Some of them stayed and never stopped building. Some walked away and built something even better on their own terms. One remains a genuine open question. And the man who started it all? He's still out there, still turning discarded metal into something that genuinely makes people stop and stare, with absolutely no signs of slowing down. Whether Season 5 ever materializes is anyone's guess. But WelderUp? WelderUp is forever. Hit subscribe, because next time we're diving deep into another show you thought you knew inside out. Trust us? You don't. See you there.